Hello, Sarah of SEK Handmade here, and today I'm going to share with you how to work a front post puff stitch. Let's go. I am really in love with the texture that this stitch brings to any project you add it to. You can see right here are my front post puff stitches, and oh my goodness, that texture is just fantastic. And I do really love that it's such a great high texture stitch that it looks amazing on a tonal like this purple here and on a variegated. It's got such good depth that you can really see the stitch super well on both examples. For this tutorial, you're going to need any yarn that you'd like to use along with a coordinating hook. So I'm using a heavy, bulky weight yarn here and a USK or 6.5 millimeter hook. The front post puff stitch is a multiple of 2 stitches. So go ahead and work a chain of any stitch count you'd like. That's a multiple of 2. And then we're going to be working it with some double crochets. So you either need, depending on your preference, to chain 2 or 3 to get your turning chains for your double crochets. So go ahead, chain your multiple of 2 plus 2 or 3, whichever you prefer, and I'll meet you back here. All right, since this is just a swatch, I haven't gone too crazy with the number of chains that I've worked. I have 12 chains here, which means because I'm a chain 2 person, I'm going to end up with 10 stitches. So I'm going to skip my first 2 chains and use them as my turning chain. And then I'm going to start making some double crochets in the 3rd chain from my hook. I prefer to work in the back bump of my chain, so you may find that where I'm inserting my hook looks a little different from yours. That's okay. You can work into the chain however you're comfortable. If you'd like to learn how to work into the back bump of your chain, I will leave a link to my tutorial in the show notes below so that you can take a look at that. So there are all my double crochets. The reason that I like to work into the back bump of my chains is because it leaves that pretty braid along the bottom of my work. Totally personal preference though. All right, our next row is where we're going to start working our front post puff stitches. Let's go ahead and work our turning chains. So personal preference, if you chain 2 or 3, I'm going to chain 2 and turn my work, and I'm going to go ahead and just work a double crochet in my first stitch. We're going to kind of anchor with double crochets on either side of our front post puff. To work our front post puff, we're going to use the front post technique, just like you normally would for any front post stitch. We're going to insert from front to back and back to front around the post of our chain here. But because we're going to work kind of a variation on a puff around that post stitch, we're going to yarn over first, and then we're going to insert around the post from front to back, back to front, just like we would a front post stitch. And then we're going to pull up a loop all the way up to the height of our double crochet row here. Then to make it like a puff stitch, we're going to do that again, pulling up multiple loops. I now have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 loops on my hook there. You can go ahead and yarn over, pull up again, and you'll have 7 loops on your hook. Traditional puff stitches tend to have about 7 loops in the puff. You're going to then yarn over, pull through, and you can see that gorgeous texture. Now we're going to separate these with a double crochet stitch. So in your next stitch, you're going to double crochet. Then in our next stitch, we're going to work our front post puff again. We're going to yarn over. We're going to work around the front post, pull up a loop once, twice, 3 times, pulling up nice and high, yarning over, and pulling through all 7 loops on your hook. Now, I want to show you that when you work around the post, it leaves the top of the stitch open. So just be sure that you're not working into that when you go ahead and work your double crochet. We're going to work in the next stitch and put a double crochet there. Another thing I want to mention is that depending on the designer's preference, you could work more or fewer loops in your puff stitch. So be sure to read your pattern instructions to make sure that you're using the correct amount of loops in your puff stitch. If you are ending up using more loops or fewer loops, you're going to end up using a lot more or a lot less yarn. So an important thing to keep an eye on. I personally prefer not to put a front post puff stitch in my last stitch of the row, so I'm just going to work another double crochet there. To continue on with this stitch, you can go ahead and work a row of double crochets, work a row of the front post puff stitches. I really want to encourage you to play around with this. Stack them up on top of each other, alternate where they land, play with pulling up 2 loops, 4 loops, 5, I don't know, go crazy. I think you can have a lot of fun playing with this stitch. I hope that you have fallen in love with this stitch as much as I have. It is such a fun and simple way to create a really gorgeous texture. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you enjoyed this video, I would love it if you would like this video, subscribe, turn on notifications, maybe even share it with a friend who might also enjoy learning this new stitch. There are links in the show notes below to patterns that you can use this gorgeous stitch in. I hope you have an amazing time working it. Happy crafting!